welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. So it's been a hot minute, like a couple of months. I think the last time I uploaded a video was mid-July. It is currently now the beginning of November, so it's been a while. And basically, short version is I got swamped with uni work and normal work and dance. Like, we had heaps of competitions. I needed hours because, if you couldn't tell, I have moved house. And then obviously uni, I just submitted my last assessment for the year last night. So that means I have more free time to continue creating videos for you guys. As you've gathered by the title, this is every book I have read in the past 4 months, as I think the last reading wrap up I did was for May and June. So this is for July, August, September and October. And there's quite a few books on here, because even with uni, I was listening to lots of books. And yeah, I'm sorry if it's a bit echoey in here. There's still not a lot of furniture here. I obviously have my bookshelves out again. If you've missed them, they were in storage the whole time I was staying at mum's, but they are out. They have their own little space. All right, let's get started. So the first book I read in the month of July was Boyfriend Material. You would have seen this in one of my previous videos. I really like this one. I ended up giving this one a 4 stars. I read this back in July. I obviously have read a lot since, and I've been up to a lot, but I do remember really liking this book, liking the story, liking the communication. I think communication was the biggest thing about this book that I really enjoyed. One of them had just amazing communication. The other one didn't, but that improved throughout the story. So if you're not a big fan of miscommunication, this is a book for you. There is great communication in here. I loved it. That story is so cute. I know there is a sequel, which I'm hoping to eventually get and read. The next book I read was Done and Dusted. I don't have a physical copy of this book as I read it on my Kindle, and I gave that one a 3.25 stars. I definitely remember reading this in a video, so a lot more of my thoughts would have been in that video, but I remember it was just really fast-paced, really quick, I think, and I didn't like how quick their story was moving along, and I feel like there wasn't a lot of them getting to know each other in it, and I think there was like a time jump where like important stuff in their relationship would have happened that we just didn't get to see. So I think that's why it's like not up there. I still really enjoyed it. It's a country romance, if you don't know. I really enjoyed reading it. I read it super quickly. I think I read it in like 2 sittings. But yeah, so I really enjoyed it. But I think just because of how fast paced it was, I didn't really enjoy that, hence why the 3.2. The next book I finished was Sinful Like Us. That one I listened to on audio, like I have with the rest of the series. So if you don't know, it is part of the Calloway Sister Addicted series. It is their children. I think it's the 4th one in the kids series. So I have read so many books within the series. I am so ingrained into this family. I love this family so much. Sinful Like Us, I gave 4 stars. I think, are they amazing stories? Probably not. Like, I feel like it's getting a little bit repetitive, if I'm being honest, with these kid stories. But I'm just so ingrained and invested in this family that I genuinely can't give it anything else but a 4 stars. I remember loving it. The couple in this one specifically, I love so much. Their dynamic, and they just went through so much in that book. I do remember they went through so much, and it was just a really heartfelt read, and I loved it. The next book I read was Archer's Voice. I gave this one, as no surprise, a 5 stars. It is amazing. I cried. One of my friends, this is her favorite books, and so I was like sending her messages while I was reading it, and it was just, it brought out so many emotions. And I remember books like this, like, I think because I listen to so many books, it's hard for me to fully connect with stories and characters, but I physically read this one and I just felt so connected. I was feeling so many emotions while reading it, and it just brought out so much. I loved it. If you have not heard of this, it is amazing. This is about Archer, who had a very traumatic childhood, who meets a new girl in town, and they just connect, and she is able to understand him like no one else has. A good old romance, but it's just written so beautifully that I genuinely have no words to describe it. It's just written so beautifully, and I cried, and I hardly cry with books and TV shows and movies and all that, but I remember like I was sitting there and like tears were forming, and I was like, oh my god. and you just go through so many emotions through this book. So a warning, if you're not prepared to cry, probably wait until you're in a good enough state to cry to read this one, but I highly, highly, highly recommend this one. The next book I have is The Secret Heiress. Now this is the mystery book of July, and so that is the video that will probably be uploaded after this one, so you will get a lot of my thoughts and reviews in that. But a basic thing, it is based in, I think, Sydney, Australia, or Melbourne. It's either Sydney or Melbourne. So that was really good to read a book based in Australia. That's not really common in the books that I usually pick up, but it's based in, I think there's 2 timelines. You've got late 1880s, you've got late 1800s, I think it's 1880, and then early 1900s, like 1903, just from what I flicked through. So you get 2 separate timelines, you get 2 separate characters, and it was just amazing to go through the journeys of these characters and throughout the story kind of guess how their stories are connected, and when you find out at the end, it's just amazing. I surprisingly really liked this book. I think I gave it a 3.75 stars. Again, most of my reviews and thoughts will be in the video coming after this one, but it was such a surprisingly good read. Like, I felt like when I opened it, I believe I thought I would like it, mainly towards the end because the beginning chapters are so long, so the beginning was a bit slow, but towards the end I was constantly like, I need to know what's going on, I need to know what's happening next, like I can't put this down. It was just so good. And then the last book for July is no surprise, Happy Place by Emily Henry. I believe this one came out in June or July. This was amazing. I read this in a day, I believe. Like, I just flew through it. I could not put it down. I loved the characters. They were just amazing in their story, and I don't usually read stories about people reconnecting their romances. With the romances I do read, it is very much a, like, they are meeting this person and stuff, but with the romances I have read about reconnecting romance, they usually tend to be my favorites, like with people we meet on vacation and Love in Other Words. Like, second chance romances I love, and I really like this one. I know this isn't just a romance book, I think it's a literary fiction romance, which I have found out that I surprisingly really like that. I like her writing style. Her writing style in this one was amazing. It was beautiful. But if you haven't heard about this one, it is about a friendship group who are going on their last summer trip to one of their family's vacation homes as their parents are selling the home, and so it's their last trip. And you've got your main couple who haven't told their friends that they have split up, so they have to pretend to be together while on this holiday. It's about them reconnecting with themselves and each other and finding the things that made them fall in love with each other, and you find out what was the reason they split up in the first place, and you're like, how do they what's the word? How they just kind of like deal with that reason and how they connect and communicate with each other about it. That took me a long time to figure out the word. But yeah, 5 stars. I loved this one. It was amazing. So that was all the books I read in July, and now moving on to August. So the first book I read in August was When in Rome by Sarah Adams. I gave this one a 3.75. It was super short, super sweet. I loved it. And after reading Happy Place and how much that couple has gone through, it was really cool just to read. Like, I would describe this as like a very light, easy read. It's just like about the romance and the people. Not too much is going on, not too much drama, not too much intensity. It's just a light-hearted, sweet romance, and I really needed that. I flew through this one as well. I absolutely loved it. The reason it's not higher, I think, is just, I think it was also like very fast-paced, I believe, as well, and there wasn't much, if I'm remembering correctly, there wasn't much communication as to like them connecting with each other. It was just kind of like they're hanging out all the time and they like kind of notice little things and then they're together. I really liked it. It's about this girl who flees to Rome, Kentucky from her life as a superstar. She just needs to get away, and she runs into the main guy who owns a bakery, and they just kind of connect, and it's just very sweet and wholesome, and it was really cute. Then obviously following that, I read Practice Makes Perfect. I gave this one a 4 stars. I know a few people liked When in Rome better than Practice Makes Perfect. I remember really enjoying this one a lot more. I feel like they had a better connection and chemistry in there. And I know like some of the reasons that people don't really like this book is because of some of like the quirks that the main character has and things. I think the one thing is she doesn't like swearing, and so she's like a swear jar, like a swear tally, and people are like, that's so immature. But I didn't mind it. It like was just another part of her character. I was more interested in the two characters together and how they molded together and how they worked with each other. And it's just really sweet and super kind. And I love the guy in this. He was so sweet and amazing, and he topped the guy from When in Rome. Also, sorry, I don't remember anyone's names. I know they're on the back, but again, I read this a while ago, and my next monthly wrap-ups will have a lot more detail, I promise. But I also don't want to make this a very long video. Then the next book I read was Flawless by Elsie Silver. This is the first book in the Chestnut Spring series, and this series will be a recurring theme throughout this, as I absolutely devoured this series. It's such an amazing series as a whole. Flawless itself, I gave a 3.75 stars. I really enjoyed it, especially upcoming reading Done and Dusted. I feel like this one was written very well. Also with Done and Dusted, it was like less than 300 pages, so you didn't have a lot to explore them in, so this one's obviously a lot bigger. I remember really liking this one as well. Again, I'm so sorry for how like non-descriptive I'm being and being very repetitive. Yeah, this is a country romance between a professional bull rider who did something who needs to clean up his act. So the female character is told to watch over and keep an eye on him, and obviously through that false proximity they make a connection and they find love. But yeah, it was really good. I really liked it. Definitely got me interested in reading the rest of the series. The next book I read in August was Hooked by Emily McIntyre. This one was interesting. I haven't really read many like dark romances, as you would call it. This is like mafia, but it's also like a twisted tale of Captain Hook and Wendy. If you don't know what the series is about, like there's a whole bunch of books where you get twisted fairy tales. They're not retellings, they're like they've been mangled, and it's usually like the villain coming out on top and having a romance. And that sounds so interesting, but I think just the type of book that it is, especially coming off reading the last two books I read, which were very wholesome, like the first two having little to no spice at all, and then Flawless having some spice but not too much. I think reading into this, it was just a lot. And I remember reading stuff like this a couple years ago and I loved it, and I don't know what's kind of changed, but I definitely feel like after reading this that I really like the more wholesome, sweet romances rather than dark romances. I've definitely come to know that when a guy's very possessive, when they're like, she is mine, no one can touch her, blah blah blah, before they've even kind of met the person, like they've just seen them and find them attractive, and then they're like, that female is mine and no one else will touch her and I will kill anyone who does. That's to me very extreme, and I am not a fan that I found. I'm glad I read it. It was like a good book and I enjoyed it, but there was just things that I just didn't gel with properly. It's kind of deterred me from continuing the series, because why would I read a series that I'm like not really enjoying? That's not saying it's not good and it's not written well. It's written really well and I really liked it. I like the concept of the story. Again, it's just that very possessive male type that I'm not the biggest fan of. Next we have Heartless by Elsie Silver, the second book in the Chestnut Spring series. I gave this one a 4.5 star. It is like one of my favorites in this series. So Heartless is about Summer's best friend. Get age gap in there. I think it says 13 years here, so it is an age gap romance, but that didn't really deter me. I really liked their story. I like how feisty they were with each other. Their banter was amazing. I love their banter. It was just so good. I think she's taking care of his son, which it's amazing, the cute interactions that they have as like a little family before they realize they're a little family, and I just found it so sweet and I loved it so much, hence why the 4.5. It is still one of my favorites in the whole series. I absolutely adored this one and I very highly recommend this whole series. Their chemistry as well in this was amazing. There's like a certain scene where they like taking care of each other, and it's just so wholesome and sweet, and they don't want to like ruin things with each other, and they feel like they're bad for each other, but they're very much good for each other, and it is so good. The last book I read in August was Powerless by Elsie Silver, continuing on with the Chestnut Spring series. This is about the brother's cousin, or like brother from another mother type situation. Like it's like a best friend that they've grown up with that they consider a brother, and his childhood best friend. They kind of grow apart a bit, but they've come back together after like an incident happened, and they just kind of rekindle their romance. I think I gave this one a 4 stars originally, but I'll probably bump it down to a 3.75, just because I think it took a little while. I haven't really thought about it as much as the other two in the series. It's still really written really well, and like you get that childhood best friends aspect where they know each other so well, but they've also spent so much time apart that they're also like rediscovering each other, themselves within their relationship. And it was just really cute, and I did like it. So that is all the books that I read in August, and now to move on to September. Okay, so September is where it starts to dwindle down, as this is when I moved. I had a trip to Sydney for a cousin's wedding. I had lots of Eisteddfods and performances and rehearsals, and this is when like assessments started coming up. So we kind of dwindled down from here. The first book I read in September was One Last Stop. Now this is a reread for me. I read this originally last year or the year before. When was this released? 21. So 2 years ago I would have read this, and I remember really liking it to begin with. I just kept thinking about it and wanting to reread it and kind of re-go into the story and like think about the things that I've missed out, and I definitely really enjoyed it. It is again a 5 stars. I think I originally gave it a 5 stars. But if you don't know, this is by the author of Red, White and Royal Blue, and it is about 2 girls. One of them is on a train and she can't leave the train. She's kind of stuck there, and then this other girl who can like see her, and they make a connection, and they're trying to figure out how to get this girl off the train, and within that they find romance with each other, and it's just really cute. And it's like romance with like a hint and sprinkle of like supernatural elements or fantasy elements. It's written super well. I absolutely loved it, obviously because it's a reread. The next book I read is Reckless by Elsie Silver. This is the 4th book in the Chestnut Spring series. This one is about Summer's sister Winter, which you get hints of throughout the book. I really enjoyed this one. It is up there. I gave it a 4.75, but this is about Winter, and you get her journey and her background and the trauma that she's been through. Now I know there's a trope in here that a lot of people didn't like and they're not a fans of. I personally loved it, and the way it just changed the dynamic with the characters, and it added a complication into the characters' lives in a way that made them connect on a deeper level, and it was more meaningful, and it was just written really well. And I loved the story. I loved the maturity in this book and how they handled things and how everything was like dealt with. And I can't really say anything without spoiling like the main kind of like hidden plot point. I know a lot of people have said what it is and have spoiled it, but it's not written on the back, so I'm not saying what it is. If you've read both, you probably can see a recurring theme as to both the books that I really enjoyed in this series, and like what thing they both had in common. I love it so much, and I need to find more books with that. The last book I read in September is Things We Left Behind, which is the 3rd book in the Knockabout series, is it? By Lucy Score. Can we appreciate how beautiful this cover is? Like, I've got the other 2 covers here. These covers are stunning. So I gave this one a 3.75. I remember being so hyped up to read about this couple, and I know a lot of YouTubers that I've seen as well have had similar thoughts, where you've seen this couple kind of interact throughout the first 2 books, and they're just, you get some of their background, so you're really intrigued. And I feel like a lot of it was just going over background and a lot of background and a lot of their backstory, which I understand that you need, but also like we also kind of got that, and I feel like it could have been shortened. And a lot of it was them separately. A lot of this book was just them separately and what they were dealing with separate. I really like how Lucy Score's books have that other plot point, and it's not just entirely a romance. There is kind of like a mystery added into it, which is really entertaining, and it's new and fresh. But I feel like this one focused more on that plot point than on the romance, and so I think that's what kind of bumped it down. And there's a trope in here. It was weird, and I'll talk about it a bit later with a different book. But yeah, that one, it kind of like stuck out to me. So when I saw it later, I was like, oh, okay. I definitely believe it could have been a bit shorter and focused more on their romance and then reconnecting. But yeah, I still really enjoyed it and would recommend. And now we move on to October, finally. The first book that I read in October is Divine Rivals. Now, if you follow any of like the main booktubers, you know Sarah Crowley. This is like one of her 5-star reads of the year. She absolutely loves this book. She goes on about this book all the time. And I finally read it because it was released in Australia a lot later than it was in the US, like every book ever is. It's really annoying. But I gave this one a 4 stars. I really liked it. It felt so cozy to read. It was like a cozy fantasy romance. I liked the story. I didn't realize though that it's apparently a part of a series, and it left on a cliffhanger. And as I was like, what? Because I was getting to the end of the book and I'm like, nothing's been resolved, what's going on? Part of a series. So now I have to wait for the other books because it left on a cliffhanger. And I really, really need to know what happens to these characters because I will throw this book across the room if I don't know soon. So yeah, this one a 4 stars. I really liked the romance. I liked the characters. They were just super sweet. I feel like the plot point in like the world and what was happening is very unique. I haven't really read anything like that before, and I really liked the concept. Now, the next book I read in October was Hopeless by Elsie Silver. I currently do not have a physical copy, but I will eventually get this because Hopeless, again, 4.75. I really enjoyed it. I really liked their connection. I really liked the story in it. But if you read the series, you know about this brother and the things he has gone through. He's gone through so much. It is mentioned throughout the other books. Again, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil anything about the rest of the series. Like, I just highly recommend you read this series. It felt very different to the others. And again, there is an age gap. I think it's like 15 years. So that is brought up. So again, if you don't like age gap, just letting you know that there is that. But I didn't mind it at all. But yeah, I think their connection and what they go through, and it's about them both trying to help each other in avoidance of like going through their own stuff, but in them helping each other, they're forced to go like through their own stuff, and they both just kind of heal and grow together. And I think that's really, really important and cute, and I really like that element of this story. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. I'd highly recommend you read the whole Chestnut Spring series. It is absolutely gorgeous. And then the next book I read was By a Thread by Lucy Score. I listened to this one again. See, this was the one that had the same kind of element trope thing as Things We Left Behind, and because I think I read them so close together, that's why it clicked to me that it literally was the exact same thing that happened in both books. And it's like, I don't want to spoil anything, but it was like him being like, you're gonna do this because I said so, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. Not in a bad way, but also not in an entirely good way. It was just, if you've read both, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because it was quite literally the exact same thing. It felt like she went copy-paste from this book to this book. Obviously from By a Thread to Things We Left Behind. Like, it generally felt like the exact same thing was happening. And so I think I just picked up on that because I read them so close together. So if you're gonna read both, just letting you know that there's something that happens in the book that's literally like a copy and paste. But taking that away, I really liked By a Thread. I liked the banter between the characters. The banter was just really good. My mum read this one before I did and she really liked it. But I really liked their banter and the way they worked together. I gave it like a 3 stars. Like, the last book I read in October, and for this wrap up, is Wildfire by Hannah Grace. Now, she is the author of Icebreaker, which was huge last year, I believe. I think I read it over New Year's. I think I read Icebreaker, and I remember really liking it. So I picked this one up, and oh my god, this surpassed every expectation that I had. I love this. And I'm giving this a 4.75. I absolutely love this. I constantly think about this book. I think about the characters, I think about what happened, I think the communication in this book. I love the communication. The communication was amazing. Oh my god. What is sexier than communication, especially from a male? That was also really good in Icebreaker, I do believe, as well. But the communication in this book, and just the funness that is them being camp counselors, it just felt like fun to read. It felt like they were having fun. It felt like a fun time. and I love that. It was so good. I didn't realize when I first picked this up that this is part of the same series as Icebreaker. I thought they were just two completely separate books, but no, this is a series. So you've got the main guy, he is on the ice hockey team as well as the main guy from Icebreaker, and then the female is like a completely separate person, but yeah, it's following like the ice hockey team and stuff. So you've got that. I didn't realize that, and I know that the next book is like for Henry, and I love Henry. Henry's amazing. We stand Henry. But this dude surprised me a lot. He is so like kind and thoughtful. Even with everything he's got going on in his life, he always made sure that she was okay, that she was doing fine, got anything that she needed, and it was just the sweetest thing. And I think this book was a really good balance between that sweetness and a little bit of spice. I think Icebreaker, there was a lot of spice, which is what got it really popular. This one definitely pairs back on that spice, so if you're expecting a lot of spice in this one, I would probably lower those expectations a little bit. I personally really liked the fact that there was less spice in this, and we got more of that genuine connection between the characters. Oh my god, we finished! That is all the books I read from July to October. Lots of books there. If we've noticed, there are a lot of romance books because I tend to read a lot of romance books while in my uni semesters just because they don't take too much brain power. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Sorry I've been away for so long, and I hope you enjoy me coming back, and I'll see you in the next one.